Hi, welcome back to Creative Edmo. If you are here for the first time, please subscribe. This is the Selfish Giant Part 2. Part 1 was all about the detailed explanation where we discussed the story line by line. I hope you have gone through it. Now let's discuss the objective type questions, MCQ, one word, etc. The subjective type questions, short answer questions, long answer questions, and with reference to context questions. There is a long list of questions and I have given answers to all of those questions. I hope it will help you during your assessments, evaluations and exams. So let's quickly begin. Since these are very easy questions, so let's quickly go through them. MCQ types or short answer objective types. The giant returned after dash years. Answer is 7. Who painted all the trees silver? The frost. Who covered the grass with her great white cloak? The snow. Who invited the north wind? The snow and the frost invited the north wind to stay with them. Okay. Now, he was dressed in grey and his breath was like ice. Who is he here? Is it the snow, the frost, the north wind or the hail? The answer is the hail, D part. Okay. The giant had gone to visit the dash. The Cornish ogre, the Cornish ogre or the giant ogre? Answer is B, the Cornish ogre. When spring forgot the giant's garden, who were pleased? The children, the giant, the birds and the north wind, the snow and the frost. The answer is the snow and the frost, D part. Who blew the chimney pots down? The snow, the frost, the north wind or the hail? Correct answer is C, the north wind. Now let's discuss some descriptive type questions. Describe the garden. Describe the selfish giant's garden. How does the author describe the garden? Why did the children like to play in the giant's garden? So I'm telling you the different ways in which the question can come. The garden was large and lovely with soft green grass. Beautiful flowers adorned the garden like stars. Adorned means decorated. There were 12 peach trees that bloomed in springtime with delicate blossoms of pink and pearl. In the autumn, those trees bore rich fruit. The beautiful garden attracted many birds who sang so sweetly that children used to stop their games in order to listen to their melodious chirps and songs. I'm going a bit fast because I assume that you have gone through the part 1 in which we discussed all of this in detail. If you have not, I suggest that you please go through the part 1 also. What made the children stop their games in the garden? Basically the same as we have done earlier. The beautiful garden attracted many birds who sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to their melodious chirps and songs. Where had the giant gone? What did he find on his return? The giant had gone to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre. He found the children playing in his garden. What did the selfish giant see when he came back? What was his reaction to what he saw? Again, the same kind of question. When the selfish giant came back, he saw the children playing in his garden. He got angry. His gruff voice scared the children and they ran away. He did not want to share his garden with anyone. What did the giant do to stop anyone from entering or playing in his garden? The giant built a high wall all around the garden and put up a notice board forbidding anyone to enter his garden. Forbidding means prohibiting, stopping. What was written on the notice board? Trespassers will be prosecuted. Prosecuted here means punished, as we discussed in part 1. How did the giant's action affect the children? How did the children feel when the giant built a high wall all around the garden? The poor children were very sad. They had nowhere to play. Now I have written this in bracket. It means that if it is a long answer, you can write it. If it is a short answer, then you can skip it. The part written in the bracket. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones. They did not like it. They used to wander round the high wall when their lessons were over. Wander here means roamed here and there. And reminisced. Reminisced means fondly remembering what was there in the past. And reminisced about the wonderful time they had in that beautiful garden. Okay. They tried to play on the road. Name the chapter or the story, name the author. These lines have been taken from the story The Selfish Giant, written by Oscar Wilde. Now, normally whenever reference to context questions come with reference to context questions, we write like this. These lines have been taken from the story. Now, I just told this once. I will not be repeating it again and again in the further questions. So, you please understand that this is how you have to write. Okay. Who are they? They refers to the children who used to play in the giant's garden. Now please note, normally with they we write they refer, right? But over here we have written they refers because they is in the comma. Okay, so we are treating it as a single thing, like what does it refer to? Okay, so that's why we are writing they refers to. If we remove this these quotes, then we would write they refer. Okay, they refers to the children who used to play in the giant's garden. Why couldn't they play on the road? The children couldn't play on the road because it was very dusty and full of hard stones. They did not like it. They missed the soft green grass of the giant's garden. Now again I repeat that I am going a bit fast because we have all discussed this in part 1. In case you need to have a look at these answers, you can pause the video and read at your own speed. Okay. Why did the spring not come to the giant's garden? The selfish giant forbade the children. Forbade is the past form of forbid. The selfish giant forbade the children from entering his garden. That's why the spring did not come to the giant's garden. It was still winter there. The trees forgot to blossom and the birds did not care to sing in it as there were no children. Why did the birds not care to sing in selfish giant's garden? Again the same answer. Okay. The birds did not care to sing in the selfish giant's garden because there were no children. The giant had built a high wall all around the garden and forbade the children from entering. Different ways in which the same questions can be asked. Then the spring came and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Describe the giant's garden during this time. Very important question. It was spring all over the country, but in the selfish giant's garden, it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it as there were no children and the trees forgot to blossom. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried. Who are they here? They refers to the snow and the frost. What did the snow and the frost decide to do? Or what did the snow and the frost do in the giant's garden? They decided to live in the giant's garden all the year round. The snow covered the grass with her great white cloak and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them and he came. Describe the north wind. The snow and the frost invited the north wind to stay with them in the selfish giant's garden. He came wrapped in furs and he rode all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. This is a delightful spot. Who said these words to whom? Identify the speaker. The north wind said these words to the snow and the frost. So, the north wind is the speaker, okay? What did the speaker suggest to do after saying these words? The speaker suggested that they should ask the hail on a visit. Or you can say, the speaker suggested that they should invite the hail to the selfish giant's garden. Describe hail. The hail was dressed in grey and his breath was like ice. What did the hill do when he came to the giant's garden? Every day for 3 hours, the hail rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. I hope you remember I showed you the picture of slates and how he must have broken it, right, in part 1. Okay, he's too selfish, she said. Who is she here? Who is he here? She refers to the autumn. He refers to the giant. What did she do? The autumn or the she. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but she didn't give anything to the giant's garden because he was too selfish. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. Who is he here? He refers to the selfish giant. What sounded so sweet to his ears? The lovely music of a little linnet singing outside his window sounded so sweet to his ears. I hope you remember I showed you the picture of the linnet in part 1. Okay, small bird. Why did it seem to him to be the most beautiful music in the world? The selfish giant forbade the children from entering his garden. Consequently means as a result of, consequently, the spring, the summer and the autumn did not visit his garden because he was too selfish. The winter stayed all the year round. The snow, the frost, the north wind and the hail turned his lovely garden into a cold white garden where neither trees blossomed nor birds came to sing. So when he heard the little linnet singing outside his window, it was after a very long time that he heard any bird sing. That's why it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. I hope you remember that in part 1 we discussed that why the snow, the frost, the north wind, the hail, the seasons, all these seasons and the snow, frost, north wind, hail, they have been treated as the characters like human beings. So they are written in capitals also. Please go through part 1 if you have forgotten that. I believe the spring has come at last. Who said these words to whom? The giant said these words to himself. What made him believe that the spring had come? The hail stopped dancing over his head, the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. This made him believe that the spring had come. Ceased means stopped. We discussed it in part 1. Also, I showed you the picture of casement if you remember. Okay, a window that opens like a door. What had happened just before the spring had come? The giant was lying awake in his bed when he heard the lovely music of a little linnet singing outside his window. It seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Why did the spring come to the giant's garden? Describe the lovely scene when the spring finally came to the giant's garden. Different ways in which this question can be asked. The spring came because the children had come back to the giant's garden. They had crept in through a little hole in the wall. In part 1, I had described what the word crept means. Okay, it's past of creep if you remember. They were sitting on the branches of the trees. The trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms. The birds were twittering with delight and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. We discussed all this in part 1. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. Describe the corner. Who was there in that corner? Describe him. It was the farthest corner of the garden and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree and he was wandering all round it crying bitterly. Why was it still winter there? Spring had come because the children had come back to the giant's garden. In every tree there was a little child. This made the trees so happy that they had covered themselves with blossoms. However, in this corner, the little boy could not climb the tree because he was so small. That's why the poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. Thus, it was still winter in that corner. Very important question. What melted the giant's heart? Another important question. The giant saw the little boy who was crying bitterly because he could not climb the tree. Even when the tree bent its branches down so that the boy could climb, he couldn't do it because he was too tiny. This melted the giant's heart, who had realized that the spring came only when the children came back and the trees blossomed because they were happy to have the children back. He realized how selfish he had been and decided to help that poor little boy who couldn't climb the tree. So finally, the giant regretted. The garden became winter again. Why did it happen? The giant's heart melted when he saw the poor little boy who couldn't climb the tree because he was too tiny. He went out into the garden to help him, but the other children got scared when they saw him. So they ran away and the spring went back along with them. Hence, the garden became winter again. Climb up, little boy. Who said this and to whom? Why couldn't the boy climb the tree? The tree said these words to the little boy. He couldn't climb the tree because he was too tiny. Who helped the little boy climb the tree? The giant helped the little boy climb the tree. Please do pause in between to read the questions carefully, okay? Why did the little boy not run like the other children? Other children ran away because they saw the giant coming and got frightened. The little boy was crying bitterly because he could not climb the tree. His eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. So he did not run away. What happened when the giant put up the little child onto the tree? When the giant put the little child up onto the tree broke at once into blossom. The birds came and sang on it, and the little boy flung his arms round the giant's neck and kissed him. We discussed all these words in part 1. Please go through it if you have forgotten, okay? What did he do after saying these words? He took a great axe and knocked down the high wall that he had built all around the garden. What does the giant realize in his old age when he saw the children playing in his garden? Very important question. What did he learn finally? The giant realizes that the children are the most beautiful flowers one can ever have. One winter morning, he looked out of his window and saw a marvelous sight. Describe this marvelous sight. The giant saw a tree covered with lovely white blossoms in the farthest corner of the garden. Its branches were all golden and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Who has dared to wound you? What wound is being referred to here? The little child had wounds on his palms and feet. There were the prints of 2 nails on his palms and the print of 2 nails on his little feet. I hope you remember in part 1 we discussed about it, the references to Christianity and Jesus Christ. If you have forgotten, please go through it. Let me remind you again. What was the child's reply? The child replied that those were the wounds of love. What happened after this? The giant died. The children found him lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. The little child was Lord Jesus Christ himself, who had melted the giant's heart all those years back and made him realize that children were the most beautiful flowers of all. When the giant grew old and feeble, the Lord had once again come to the giant to accompany his soul from his mortal garden to the Lord's immortal garden. I hope you remember that we discussed the meaning of the words feeble, mortal, immortal in part 1. Okay. Please go through this question very carefully. It is very important. Describe the wounds of the little child. What did those wounds reveal about the child? What is the significance of those wounds? There were prints of 2 nails on the palms of the child's hand and the prints of 2 nails on his little feet. The wounds revealed that the child was in fact the image of Lord Jesus. God himself had descended in the form of a little child. Descended means come down. To melt the selfish giant's heart all those years back. To melt the selfish giant's heart all those years back. Finally, when the giant had become old and was about to die, God came back once again in the form of that little child to accompany the giant's soul from this mortal garden. Mortal means something that can die, to his immortal garden. Immortal, which will live forever. That is the paradise. Okay. As we call heaven also paradise. What did the children find in the end? The children found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. Who do you think the child was? The wounds on his palms and feet revealed that the child was in fact the image of Lord Jesus. God himself had descended in the form of a little child to melt the selfish giant's heart all those years back. Finally, when the giant had become old and was about to die, God came back once again in the form of that little child to accompany the giant's soul from this mortal garden to his immortal garden. That is the paradise. Okay. Now this is the same answer, but the question is a bit different. So you can shift some parts here and there according to what the question has been asked. Okay. The giant lay dead, all covered with white blossoms. What does this sentence indicate about the once selfish giant? Very important. The once selfish giant had transformed into a loving giant who was blessed with the touch and love of God. Lord Jesus Christ had come in the form of a little child all those years back and melted giant's heart and made him realize the importance of love and kindness. At the time of his death, Lord came once again in the form of that child to accompany his soul from the giant's mortal garden to the Lord's immortal garden, that is the paradise. Being covered with white blossoms signify how the giant was now surrounded by the love of God. White is the color of peace and serenity, calmness, peace. He was finally at peace. Very important. See how same things you repeat in different questions, okay? So you don't need to cram everything. You just need to understand. Okay. That is why it is important for you to listen to part 1 so that you understand the story properly. Now, if this video helped you, kindly like, share and subscribe to Creative Edmo. I tried to take as many questions as possible. Still, if you want me to deal with some more questions, please leave some comments. Thank you.